So back to Project Horizon. And this is how it looked at the end of Q3. So for Project Horizon, it runs from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. And so this is our position as at the 30th of September. So of course, I should have all those dates written in here to make it clear for a user. So our actuals are from the 1st of the 1st to the 30th of the 9th. Okay? And our budget remaining is then from the 1st of October to the 31st of December. So, as always, here's my budget column. I've brought in my actuals just using a pivot table and a VLOOKUP. You can see that's here. And then I've got my budget remaining, which we've looked at is simply the budget minus the actuals. And then I've done my percentage spend. And of course, as this is at 9 months out of 12, we'd expect 75% to be our tracking rate. And that's our first go-to as an indicator of how we're doing in terms of our actual spend against our budget. And so here are my percentage spends. And then I've done my commentary here. I've already reviewed budget versus actuals, and these are the comments I've made. So we'll look at these in more detail as we come to do our forecast now. So to prepare for my forecast, I have added a few more columns. So I've added this column here where I'm going to document the assumption that I'm making for the numbers that are going to appear in the forecast. Then I've added a column for October, November and December. And then this column here, this will add up my current actuals plus October, November, December to give me the forecast for where I think I will end up at the end of the year when year one of the project is complete. And here, this again will just show me if there is any budget remaining. And this column here will show me what my percentage spend is likely to be at the end of year one. So let's start with our salaries. So our program manager, 81% spent. That seems pretty reasonable, pretty close to the 75%. We can also have a look at it again in the transaction listing. That was 4001. And I can see that this is looking very standard actually, isn't it? 1,200 plus 240. So 1,440 a month. And there doesn't seem to have been any change in that throughout the year. So I am going to assume that this forecast is going to continue as in prior months. So my rationale is just going to be consistent costs each month, forecast based on actuals, yeah, spell very well, and it was 1,440 per month. Okay, so at the end, Elizabeth is going to be a little overspent, but that might be because the base salary was a little higher than originally budgeted. But you know, this seems reasonable to me, 108%. So I'm happy that that's in my forecast. Finance and admin officer, well, that's even better at 75% to date. So let's have a look at our finance and admin officer on 4002. 4002. There we go. And we've got Jonas, and again, Jonas is very consistent at 1,000 a month. So I'm going to be very happy here to just put in Jonas at 1,000 a month. And I'm going to use the same rationale. My M&E officer, 73%, great, tracking really well at Q3. Let's have a look on the transaction listing, 4003. Okay, so here I can see in January there was a little bit more, but since then it's very consistent at 209 per month. So let's have a look at that, 209 per month. 209 per month. Obviously, I've used them wrong. So now we have our M&E officer also tracking very well at 73% to date. So we could have a look on the transaction listing at 4005 for M&E officer. And I can see that for the first few months, they're at 750, and then it's gone up to 800. So I know that that was a small pay rise, but now they're tracking consistently at 1,000. So I'm happy that I'm going to put 1,000 per month in for Exxon as well and have the same rationale. Now, just to note that if I was very happy that the cost is tracking well, like this one, for example, at 75%, I might even decide that actually I'm not even going to look at the transactions. I'm just going to take my cost to date here and divide it by 9 months. So I get a monthly rate, and that would be an equivalent way of creating a forecast. If your transactions are easy to review, then you know that's probably slightly more accurate, but this is just an alternate route. So I'll copy this across, but to copy it, I need to make sure that this is an absolute reference. I'll copy this across. I'll just show you what would have happened if I hadn't have made that an absolute reference. If I'd have moved G11 over G0 over 9 here, if I'd have moved that across without an absolute reference, you can see now that the next one references H11 and the next one references the 75%. So that makes no sense. And so that's why I've highlighted and done F4 here to add my absolute references, and then I can copy that across. So my country director is at 76%, so that looks good as well. But I know it's very easy to review my transactions here, so I'll have a quick look at my country director and look, 240 a month. That looks pretty easy to judge. So we'll put in 240, 240 and 240, and I'm going to copy the assumption down as well. My HR officer now, my HR officer is a little overspent already at 96%. And I've already reviewed it and said it's over budget as filled by a person with a higher salary than budgeted, plus more time needed at the start of the project for recruitment and contracting. Okay, well, let's have a look at what costs we are charging currently for them in 44003. Yeah, so here we can see that was where they charged a little more at the start of the project. And now we're consistently charging 209 per month. So I think for the moment, let's stick on the 209 per month, knowing that, you know, if we needed to, perhaps we could look for a way to reduce that because it will come in a little overspent. But for now, let's just put in our 209, 209, 209, and we will use the same assumption again. Finally, on staff, we've got our logistics officer, and that is underspent as they didn't start until March. Let's have a look at how they are being charged now. So we'll just, for a bit of variety, we'll search by words this time. Logistics, there they are. And well, yeah, so Lennox is being charged at £540 a month. So let's put in Lennox's costs at £540 a month. And they're also based on actuals. So we are forecasting that these guys are all kind of within that kind of a 10% range, which seems quite reasonable. The HR officer is going to be a bit overspent and logistics a little underspent. But if you remember, on this project, the important thing is that the salaries as a whole are within 10% of the budget, either going up or down. So I've still got my little summary section here at the bottom. And I can see actually that once I do my forecast, my salaries are due to come in at 101%, because where we've overspent, it's being made up for with underspends. So I'm happy to leave those forecasts as they are. Now we're on to our activities. And firstly, we have venue hire. And currently that is a little underspent at 68%, although it's quite near the 75%. But for the venue hire, we know that in Project Horizon, the conference is being held in September. So we should really know our venue costs fairly certainly by now. And actually, I've spoken to our accounts department, and what they have said is that the payments to date were kind of the actual reservation of the venue and the cost for the venue, but we have an invoice coming and it is around 2,800 for food and drinks, etc. at the conference. So I'm going to put in, not there, I'm going to put in here, in October, I'm expecting an invoice of 2,800, and I'm going to say that that is based on expected invoice. Okay. And so then that's going to be 100% spent. On my backup generator, that's already at 104%, but we've already purchased it, so there's nothing more to expect. So no further expenditure on this line. We've got no expenditure on the projector, but I've already written the commentary that it wasn't needed. So again, there's going to be no further expenditure on that line. Now my stationery, we've said in the past that stationery is a tricky budget to do accurately because there's lots of moving parts and there's different demands for stationery volumes. But we're not doing too badly, 66%. So maybe what we could do in this case is the technique that we looked at before, and we could say, well, at the moment, our actuals are 297. If I divide that by 9, I'm spending on average 33 a month. So let's perhaps assume that that average is going to continue. So I'm just going to apply my absolute reference there and copy that across. And I'm going to say, based on average spend per month to date. And let's have a look and see where we're going to come in, 88%, okay. So now we're on to our travel and accommodation section. International flights are at 99%. And we've held the conference, so our budget was for our speakers to be coming back and forth. And so we'd expect that to kind of be spent by now. And I've said in my commentary that there's no more expenditure to come. So I'll copy that rationale across, and I've got no more forecast for that line. Local transport, well, that's 0 at the moment. And the invoice is due and it was quoted at 1,500. So we'll assume that the invoice is going to come in at its quoted price of 1,500. I'd say that the invoice is due imminently. Imminently, quite hard to spell. Accommodation costs. So they're already a bit over. And this is my commentary so far. I've said it was slightly higher than budgeted due to the mix of hotels that were available. Oh, but there's no more cost to come on this line. And that makes sense because it was the budget for the conference. So again, we've got no more expenditure on this line. Speakers' fees and allowances. Some invoices still to be paid. Okay, so I'm going to need to look at the transactions, speak to the accounts department and see if there's any invoices coming in. So I've now investigated and found that I've actually got 3 or 4 invoices and they add up to 355.50. So based on outstanding invoices to be paid, okay? And that means that I'm going to come in there 88%, so a bit underspent, but that's all I have to put on that line that I'm aware of at the moment. So conference advertising, 144%, 175% and 0. Now, as you recall from the budget versus actuals review, we had a bit of a change of heart here in the way that we were going to approach the advertising. So here I've said that the first line was overspent due to a change in the advertising approach, and money was spent on digital advertising and podcasts rather than traditional advertising. As was this one, and this was not spent because we used digital delivery instead. However, that was all for the advertising and training, etc. So we don't expect any more expenditure on those lines. On our baseline assessment, again, the baseline assessment has already been completed, so we wouldn't be expecting anything further on that line. Post-conference monitoring, well, this is only at 8%, and of course, the conference has just happened, so we'd be expecting that this is a line where our expenditure will be in the late part of the year. So again, we need to have a look at our contract with our selected consultants, see what the amount is that we need to budget for in this forecast. So I've now had a look at the consultant proposal, and actually the quotation was 1,400, and that's due to be paid all in December upon delivery of the report. So I'll put that in there and say that that is based on consultant contract. So that's the activities complete. And if I look at my summary here, I can see that despite the fact that some are a little under, some a little over, overall, I'm forecasting that I'll come in at 98% spent. So there's nothing I really need to maneuver around in activities at the moment. So the final section I have to forecast for is my office costs. My office rental is tracking nicely against budget at 76%. But let's just have a look at the transactions on 7003. So 7003, and oh, I can see actually that it has just jumped to 375, and that's because we renewed our rental agreement and there was an increment. So I just need to make sure that I put in 375 for the months to come. So let's put that in then, 375, 375, 375 and 375, and I can say that that is based on monthly cost in new rental agreements. Now I have my utilities, and obviously this is a big mishmash of lots of different costs, but it's tracking pretty well to budget. And so I think I'm going to do the technique here where I take my actuals and I'm going to divide them by 9 and come up with an average based on my historic spend. So I'm just going to highlight an F4 there to add my absolute references so that now I can copy that across. I think I've already written an explanation here, haven't I, that it's based on average spend per month to date. So that's my rationale here. Motor vehicle fuel, again, it is kind of tracking as budget. I think I'm going to do the same thing and base it on average month spend. Well, yeah, I was going to say it might not be a sensible idea because we might have a different pattern of usage. We might have used it more while the conference was going on, and we're going to use it less in these final wrap-up months because there's less field work and activity. But I think for now, I'm just going to go with my average spend. So here we go. Function F4 to add my absolutes. Yep. And finally, I have my motor vehicle repairs. They're under budget, but I've already reviewed that and said that's because there's no large repairs needed in the year to date. And I'm not aware that there's any issues with the vehicle. So I've got no specific big sums to budget and forecast. And so because of that, I'm going to use the same technique again and take my average per month. If I did know that there was something specific coming up, then I would budget for that, you know, something specific like a service or new tires, a new battery, etc. But I'm not aware that there's anything pending like that. So I'm just going to do my average again. So we'll copy that across. And we're going to come in a little underspent on that, but you know, we've got a few overspends in overheads here. So now on overheads, let's have a look at the summary overall, and we're at 101%. So that sounds great as a final target. And now I can see that overall, I'm predicting that I will be 99% spent at the end of the project, and I'll have underspent by 1,000. So if I'm going to be underspent by 1,000, and that's mainly on the activities, I might critically review and think, actually, I could use that 1,000 to create more training materials for beneficiaries, or that, you know, there could be a finite activity that I want to invest that in. Or I might just be happy and think, you know what, I'm just going to report this to the donor and ask for the option of this to be rolled forward onto year 2 of the project. And in this example, that is what we're going to do. We're going to ask for a carry forward because our donor allows it. So you can see that here I have added in the carry forward from year 1, just to show you how that links back. That was the 1071 that would be remaining at the end of the project here. Okay, so I've just linked that in with an equals sign. So as well as forecasting out to the end of year 1, I'm also going to submit a revised forecast for year 2 of the project. And so here, this was my original budget for year 2, which you can see marries up to the total here. Then I've added in my extra 1071. And so now I have a total of 161813. That is going to be my restated year 2 budget. So in my reforecast for year 2, I know that I have got this extra 1071 of funds that I need to allocate. And this is also my opportunity to just change budgets per specific budget lines if I need to. So I've taken my reallocations sometimes seem to blow people's minds, and actually it's a very simple process. We just need to be logical about it, and we just need to show really clearly what we're doing. So I have the original budget here, and I've added a column where I'm going to show my reallocations. And then because I'm very transparent, I'm going to add a column with my rationale and explain my reallocations. So firstly, the 1071, I have decided to add here onto the country director budget. And I've said I want to allocate the brought forward funds as I want more country director time to support and promote the digital outputs. So that sounds like a valuable and reasonable contribution towards the project. Now, with my HR officer, I've realised that actually in year 2, I don't really need as much time as I'd initially budgeted because everybody's recruited now, things are flowing quite smoothly. And so I've said, actually, I'm going to reduce their budget. So I've taken 1,000 away. And the secret to reallocations is they need to net to zero. And not the addition because that's an additional fund, but the rest should all net to zero because all we're doing is taking it out of one budget line and putting it into another budget line. So here I've taken out 1,000 from the HR officer and I've realised that I need to allocate that to the logistics officer because there is going to be more time required from them to manage our conference guests. So you can see here that all that's happening is their original budget there was 2,327 minus 1,000, and that gives us a revised budget there of 1,327. And likewise, these two are adding together to show a revised budget of nearly 8,000. So what else have I decided to do? Well, So what else have I decided to do? Well, my venue hire, that was fairly accurate in year 1, so I'm happy to leave it as it is. Now, on my backup generator, I had a budget in for 1,338 in year 2, but I've realised actually that was an error because I don't need a backup generator in year 2 because I've already bought it. So I'm going to remove that from the budget, and I've decided that I want to reallocate it to international flights and office rental. Okay, well that makes sense because international flights were 99% spent, so perhaps we need a bit more of a buffer on there. And our rental increase in our office rental agreement was there was a small fraction there. So yes, that seems like a reasonable reallocation. So I've taken that 1,338 out. And in this case, you can see that I've split it between the So I've taken the 1,338 out here. And in this case, you can see that I have put 888 to international flights, and the rest I have put down in office costs here, 450. So if I add up my 450 and let's see this here, 450 add my 888, that equals 1,338. Yeah, so I know that I've minus 1,338 from one line and I've split it between 2 lines, but that's fine because it still nets to 0. And then finally, I've done something here on my advertising budgets because we adopted that digital approach, didn't we? So I've removed the entire budget from the printed materials and I've taken that up into the design and so that we can use it for the digital delivery. So I'm now going to sum the bottom of the reallocation column. And remember, for reallocations, it should net to 0. However, it's not going to net to 0, is it? Because we've also added in an additional 1071 from the brought forward from prior year. So my total in this column should just be the 1071. So let's add up all those reallocations. There we go. You can see in the sum here it's 1071, and you can see in my template it is 1071. And so now I have a revised year 2 budget here, and the total agrees and reconciles to the original budget plus the carry forward. So we can see that really the reallocation is a simple process. We take from one line and we give to another line, and that nets to zero. But if there are brought forward funds, we also need to allocate them, and that would increase the amount of budget from the original contracted amount. So now if we have a look at our summary, again, we can see that the analysis is here. It's 35% salaries, 48% activities, etc. But what is really, really important, and why we need a formal contract amendment, is that we need to make sure that this new split of amount by category is the one that is agreed between both parties, so that when we do our budget, the actuals for year 2, we know that it is these amounts that we are now going to be using as our fixed budget and analysing our actuals against these. So those conclusions on the reforecast and reallocations process are here. That for the reallocation, you must show the original starting point, which is the previously agreed budget. Then you're going to add your columns, and you're going to show where you're taking your money from and where you're allocating it to. And those reallocations must net to zero. Document your reasons. If there's any brought forward funds, we are going to clearly show them being brought forward and adding and increasing the original year 2 budget. And the output is what is going to make the new contract amendment and is going to be the benchmark for subsequent financial reports. So that's everything. The consolidate skills is the exercise that I've been showing you there. So have a go at doing that reforecast in your own time and get comfortable with the reforecasting and the reallocations process.